All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Unstoppable. We have a great guest, Jayson Siano from Sabre here. Really pumped about this. Jayson and I actually have never met, right? It's
True story.
First time. We had a great conversation the other day, but when it comes to creating content and commercial real estate, I mean, you're just doing it, man. You've been killing it for a while, right?
Yeah, appreciate it, man.
So I'm excited to talk to you. I have a ton of questions. Let's start kind of from the beginning. Sabre, you see it everywhere. You guys do a great job marketing yourselves. I think you guys have this real cool, trendy vibe. I think you guys knock it out of the park. How'd you get started with that, man? I know you're partners with Kenny Breslin. Like, how'd that whole thing start?
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm going on 20 years in the business.
Okay.
So I think in order to talk about Sabre, I have to, bring it back to 2001 when it all really began. So I started, well, you know what? I'm gonna bring it back to really how I got into the business, right? So I'll start there. So went to college in Arizona, University of Arizona, and ended up, unfortunately, my mom passed when I graduated college. Yeah, so I didn't really know what direction I was gonna go, and I ended up choosing to get more educated on commercial real estate. And at the same time, I was living in Manhattan, and I just decided that I had to come back to Long Island, where my roots are.
Just interested in it, or was it a thing that...
You know what? I was a DJ at the time,
Okay.
heavy in nightclubs and restaurants, and always a sneakerhead, just into retail, fashion, a bunch of different things. But I always had an interest in real estate.
Gotcha.
And based on the interests that I had, when I discovered retail real estate, it was like, a match made in heaven, so to speak, right? Yeah. So when I decided that I had to come back to Long Island, the obvious place to go was Breslin. So ended up meeting Ken Breslin through a mutual friend, talked to him, and he basically said, you're hired, you could start tomorrow. And I kind of laughed at that as I pushed my resume across the desk, and he didn't even look at it. And I realized that, right at that moment that I was getting into more or less an eat what you kill, situation where he didn't really care what my resume looked like because it was no sweat off his back, right? He wasn't paying me. I was a 1099, broker. Like,
if you make it, you make it. If you don't, you don't.
There you go.
Yep.
So that's where the journey started in 2001, and I quickly realized that I was basically alive as long as the other brokers at the company at the time were in the real estate business. So, how could I differentiate myself? How could I actually learn enough to become, one of the top producers at the company at the time? So I set out on a journey of really learning the product, which obviously, on Long Island is shopping center, grocery anchored shopping centers for the most part in downtowns. And I started to just drive the streets for the first 6 months with a stack of index cards. And I drew shopping centers on the back of the index card as I visited every shopping center on Long Island. And, on the front, I had a system. I would write the real estate location in the top left, the owner of the shopping center, the leasing agent, if there was one, property manager, whatever info I could find. And then I started calling all of those people and introducing myself. So that was kind of how it all started. So
just straight out of the gate grinding, man.
That's it, man. So, and that's how I got to where I am now, right?
That's cool.
So, no shortcuts, nothing handed to me. But, from there, I had an opportunity at Breslin. I was invited by a senior broker to pitch the Starbucks account in 2003. And up until that point, I was doing, local, mom and pop, a nail salon deal here, a cell phone store deal there, and was afforded the opportunity to go on a Starbucks pitch. And to make a long story short, the person who invited me on the pitch was very unprepared and completely dropped the ball in this pitch. And I was there, as a supporting actor, so to speak, and not prepared at all, but I was forced to jump into that.
Step up and do what you could.
Sure. And Breslin had a reputation and a track record, obviously, and I spoke about the company, not myself, because I did not have that track record and credibility. But they liked what they saw, gave me an opportunity. And that's where I really got my start doing what I do now, which is designing and executing strategies. Today I do it nationally for companies across the whole country, but back then it started on Long Island, and I'd like to actually say that we still represent Starbucks exclusively on Long Island today, which is
that's awesome.
Many years later,
that's
right?
Crazy. That's good.
So yeah, we've done hundreds of deals with them, and I could keep going, but I'm sure that we'll get into how specifically how I started Sabre.
Yeah, no, I want to talk about that, and I want to talk about I guess for me a big question is retail today, right? Retail's kind of taking a nosedive. Everyone's worried about it. I mean, you represent so many people on the retail level. What's your concern with retail moving forward? Is it a big concern for you? Do you see it differently?
I have no concern.
Okay.
Retail has been continuing to evolve as long as I'm in the business. The internet has obviously tremendously impacted everything, including retail. But based on the way that I move, if you know me or see what I do, I'm not your typical person that's doing retail real estate, right? So for me, it's coming to me now, right? Like I've been so far ahead of what most people are doing that when I start something, if I'm not in a position where people don't get it and don't understand why I'm doing, if somebody understands what I'm doing, it's probably not innovative enough for me. So, for instance, when I started vlogging, going on almost 4 years ago, nobody got it, and it was very foreign, especially in our industry. It's just not an innovative or creative industry.
It's still foreign, right?
It's still very foreign, yeah. But to that point, it's not.
It's not as foreign.
I was on a Zoom call with a group that I created called the Digital Army this morning, which is let's call it 20 people all across the country who do what I do, right, in different capacities, from a video, social media driven biz dev thing, and so it's not that foreign, right? If you're in some circles, it's not that foreign, but in the grand scheme of things, it's still very foreign. But the point is the fact that not everybody's like, Jay, what are you doing? It's less interesting to me, right? So now I'm working on stuff that's 5 years ahead, and when I do that, people, I'll know that it's kind of not futuristic enough for me when people start to get what I'll lean into.
I got you. I like it. I like the mentality. I like the approach. I think thinking that way is really outside the box, which is really cool. How did it all start? Well, first of all, I want to learn more about how you spun off from Breslin onto Sabre, and how you kind of ramped that up. That interests me.
Yeah. So from there, so just to continue the story, so I went on to learn tenant rep real estate through Starbucks. And Starbucks, a lot of the higher level people were at McDonald's and then went to Starbucks. McDonald's is the common denominator in a lot of, tenant rep work. So from there, I actually ended up, I was visiting friends in LA and discovered a concept called Chipotle in 2004 and ended up bringing Chipotle to New York and designing their strategy. So that was the next feather in my cap. And then ultimately in 2000 and late 2005, the big companies, started to pay attention to what I was doing and were pursuing me. So ultimately I ended up making a deal end of 2006 to go to CBRE and really enhance, kind of re-envision their retail group for Long Island and the outer boroughs. So it was there that I kind of, I treated CBRE as grad school, where, I before that I had become the top producer at Breslin. So, you never want to be the smartest person in the room. And I am often not the smartest person in the room, but I am more often than not the hardest working person in the room. So, that kind of grit and grind and ability to stick with things that are not necessarily easy, always put me kind of ahead, in business. But when I got to CB, I realized, quickly after getting there that it was not for me. I wanted to broaden my geography and also, learn the industrial side of the business, the office side of the business, multifamily, whatever I could possibly learn. CB was perfect for that. And I had a 5-year contract that I started in January of 2007. Basically headed right into the storm, right? So I looked at CBRE as a port in a storm. For the first time in my life, I had health insurance, and it was such a great opportunity for me at the time.
Okay. All right. Cool. Now, how'd you get into the vlogging? So I'm not from the commercial real estate world, right?
Sure.
My background is I've ran many different types of businesses, done some work in oil and gas, energy, and I've been really big and situated myself nicely in other industries to kind of capture the media, be able to grow companies through media, whether that be through publications, through some sort of like websites, news aggregators, whatever it is. I've been able to do that. So for me, when I kind of came over to Kulka, and now it's kind of Devin's taken over about 4 or 5 years ago, and it's time to revamp it because we want to take it to the next level.
Sure.
We don't want to just be a commercial builder and construction company. We want to be, much more of real estate developers, have a whole realty component, and really grow our portfolio that way. We wanted to reposition the company, and I knew a lot of that was going to be through some sort of media component,
Sure.
probably content creation. So, of course, what do? I start going out there and seeing what's out there. Like who's out there, who's doing it, and
Who'd you find?
who's doing it the best. And you were the guy.
Oh man,
you were the
I
guy.
didn't even pay you to say that.
You were the guy. Listen, you were the guy. You were doing it. You were doing it well. You had a good look to you. You were doing it before everyone else was doing it. And I'm curious, like, what made you get into that, and how did all that start?
Yeah, again, if my mother didn't pass and I can't, a lot of things wouldn't have happened, right? So what I don't talk about often is my family was in the automobile business. I've always been super creative, oftentimes you think about like life events and, if things would have happened differently, where you'd be, right? So a lot of times when I talk about this, I say, real estate kind of chose me, so it's something that I really love, and I'm very passionate about it. And I happen to have honed my skills to a place that I'm very good at it. But at the same time, like there's this creative itch that I always need to scratch, right? So if you work as long and hard as I do, you have to figure out a way to make your work as interesting as possible for you.
Stop making yourself sound so old, man. I mean, it's not that long. Come on, you're not that old.
Buddy, 20 years is a long time when you're grinding,
I get it.
when you're grinding your face off.
And I totally get that creative component, man. I'm the same exact way. Like, it just kind of merges it all together.
For sure. And at a certain point, it was out of necessity too, right? So, in 2016, a lot was changing at the company for me, and I was losing the passion behind what I was doing. We were, like I said, I was in the business at that point 15 years, and when you're doing the same thing or a different iteration of the same thing for so long, it becomes kind of like you're getting out of bed in the morning, but you're not as excited about it the way you were, right? So things changed, and I realized quickly that if I didn't do some crazy shit, that time was going to pass me by. And I realized that for me, that creating this vlog was kind of that thing that could either, take everything to the next level or crash and burn really hard. And, to be honest, like, I'm the type of person that wants to at least go for shit,
If you're going to go down swinging?
Well, because I'm never going to go down, right? You can hit me with a bus and run me back over. I'm getting up, right? So it wouldn't be about going down. It'd be about learning, right? Which is everything that I do. I'm a student of everything that I do. I'm a student of life. So, for me, it was really about like putting myself out there, because at the end of the day, I'm also not very concerned about other people's opinions. I'm at a place in my life where if I'm doing something, it's really for me and the people around me. And I always try to seek discomfort to grow as a person. So, this journey really was a lot more about that. I knew that, obviously social media and video and all of those things would create awareness and attention, right? And ultimately, if you're in the sales business in any capacity, there's only so many hands that you could shake at a cocktail party.
Of course.
And when COVID hits, it's zero. So fortunately for me, I was, 3.5 years in.
You knew 3 years ago this was going to happen. So.
Buddy, I told you, watch episode 100, and you could see my prediction on what was going to happen. I think I said 12 to 18 months out, and it was exactly 15.
Wow. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So that was, that was kind of, it was, for me, it was an experiment, and I know that good things take a while, right? So for me, it was, most people would have heard everybody, talking shit about them and, and not kept moving forward. You know what I mean? Like that, for me, that was kind of like the exciting part about it. It was because it was always so clear to me too. Like there was a chance that it would go nowhere, so to speak, but I didn't really believe that, So when people would come up to me, even in January of 2017, when this whole thing started, and ask me like, Jay, you're in real estate. Like, why?
Yeah.
I don't like why. It makes no sense. Why? I don't get it. And, at a certain point, you could actually measure the people's intelligence over time of, when they would ask that question. And, again, it's not for everybody. And, I don't suggest everybody does it, but it has worked wonders for myself, both personally and professionally.
I love hearing what you're saying because we're going through that right now, right?
Yeah.
We're a 46-year-old construction company. We've built everything you could possibly build on Long Island. We got a great business, great name, great customers, and everyone, we're moving into more development. We're branching off into other services, and everyone's like, what the hell are you guys doing? Like, what do you mean you've built a studio with stage lighting and you're developing a platform for businesses to share content and become a whole media component? And, oh, by the way, it's not a revenue generator. This is solely a marketing expense. You guys are doing it all for free. Like, I don't even get what you guys are doing. I don't even understand it. It doesn't make sense.
Yep.
And to us, when we think about it, like, it just seems so clear. It seems so obvious that this is the move. This is the next thing. This is where you have to go. If you don't go, you're going to die. Like it
Totally.
you got to roll with the punches. And in fact, in some ways, we're late to the party, right? Like we got to just get on board. We got to get on board hard, and we just got to go for it. And we are having those same conversations on a daily basis. And some people, after you explain it, they say, "Wow, this is really innovative. This is great. You guys are totally on the same track. I get it." Some guys walk in the door like you did today, and you just get it right off the bat. Like, you know exactly what we're trying to do. And other people will never get it, and that's fine. That's okay. But for us, it couldn't be any more obvious. It couldn't be any more clear. We completely understand where we're going and where we're heading and why we're doing it, and we're excited about it. So to hear you say it, hear that you had those same conversations,
Sure.
hear that you're in the same boat, and it has worked, and it is working for you. That's just reassuring to us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I to have built a company that's recognized nationally, which honestly we weren't, when in 2017, right? So, I mean, again, when it's interesting though, because everybody has a different lens into, what I'm doing, right? Like, on Long Island, where, a lot of people know me as, a Long Island real estate broker for so many years, they still see me as Jay Siano in 2007, right? Mm-hmm. The ones that are paying attention, understand really the difference between what I was doing in 2007 and what I'm doing today. And fortunately for us, when it's enabled us to differentiate ourselves from all of the other companies that are in our space, because we're doing really different things that, and it's not just about the video and the social media, but it's a master plan strategy that I put in place. Again, well, I've always had the strategy. It's a good time to kind of rewind back to, I'm at CB, right? And surrounded by folks that are not necessarily in the retail real estate business, right? And at a certain point, there's only so much you're going to learn if you're not pursuing those other avenues, right? So for me, I realized that the big companies, there was so much red tape, like I couldn't do the things I needed to do to be quick and nimble and execute the way that I was used to. So had a 5-year contract. 2008 happens. I don't have to explain that. Yeah. And, so I started to think about what the next chapter of my career was going to be. And I started to look for other opportunities for me. The obvious companies that were based on Long Island, or the other big companies, were all pursuing me, but I didn't want to make, a similar move. And nothing felt natural to me. And again, being somebody who's not comfortable in a box, I realized that if I feel that way, there have to be other people that feel that way. So that's when I decided I was going to start my own company. For me, I always respected and enjoyed the environment that I was in at Breslin. And I wanted to kind of take that and put steroids on it and create something, like I said, that was, not necessarily in the market back then in 2010. So that started with a conversation with Ken Breslin, and which is why I'm a huge fan of Not Burning Bridges. Mm-hmm. And we had a brief discussion. He said, listen, I'm good. I don't really need to do this or want to have to start over in a lot of ways. And I said to Kenny, listen, I love you, but, look, right now it's not really personal for me. I work for a big company and it's not moving the needle. So, if I come out as my own company, know that I'm actually going to be, working at full capacity this go around. I've been pretty, successful at 75%. So I don't know what's going to happen at 200. So that must have resonated with him, because he called me like a day and a half later, and we worked out a deal on the back of a napkin for him to dissolve his brokerage business and me to leave CB, pay CB to leave a year early in my contract, and start SABRE, which stands for Siano and Breslin Real Estate, which a lot of people don't realize.
I didn't realize that at first, but somewhere along the way I realized it,
yeah.
and I thought it was very creative.
Thank you.
It was very creative. It was cool. So I guess my question is, you mentioned strategy, right?
Yeah.
How much of what you guys do on the vlog or what you have done, and maybe it's become much more strategic as time went on?
Less.
Okay, that's fine. And that's really my question is, how much of it is strategic and how much of it is, I'm just going to do what I do, and we're just going to capture what I do. We're going to throw it out there, and things just start to happen because of it. I'm kind of like a believer in things just start to happen. Once the activity goes and you're out there, we're having a conversation. I mean, we would have never had this conversation had it not be for what we're doing.
Right.
You just start having conversations with people, and things just start to develop. And I want to know how much of it was strategy for you.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I took a page out of Gary Vaynerchuk's book of, documenting, not creating. Yeah. Right. So, initially, it started with, I'm not even kidding. When I decided I was going to do this, it was over the holidays in 2016. And I have a friend in television who happened to be at the house over the holidays. And I'm like, what camera should I be getting? Yeah. I bought a camcorder, bro, legit. Yeah. So he's like, no camcorder, DSLR, blah, 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 So swapped out the cameras and literally showed up at the office January 2nd with the camera and handed it to the receptionist. And it was like, okay, start filming me. Yep. And that's how it started. So,
and at first, that's probably when you first start doing something like that, it's uncomfortable. People don't really know how to react to it. You kind of looked at what the hell is this guy doing? But then over time, as people really get to know you, it happens more and more. Now, anybody that knows you knows you're doing this, right? They've seen it.
I'm out of that honeymoon phase where where that's cool too, because even think about, it's like, it's not even the people that you don't give a shit about. Like, you know, like somebody talking shit that you don't give a shit about, who cares, right? But your you know, immediate family, you know, like being like, what are you doing? What is this? And who do you think you are? You know, and it's funny because unless you do it, you can't really truly understand it, because doing it is actually really uncomfortable. And people who don't get it or don't subscribe to the concept of doing it think it's egotistical, and I think it's actually the opposite. I think it's very humbling. Because you know, at the end of the day, like, you know, when I'm walking around New York City with Brittany following me with a camera, like, I'm not trying to act like I'm some sort of celebrity. I'm not. I'm just some business person who has a creative angle to create more awareness.
And gets that, you get the benefits that it has. So even if it is uncomfortable for you, even
completely.
if, you know, even if you don't necessarily feel completely comfortable with it and you don't want to think who the hell you are and you know that it might look that way, at the end of the day, you realize all the benefits it has. So you get comfortable with it so you can keep moving forward. Funny story. Handsome homebuyer Charles Weiner. You were on his podcast. I met him one day and I saw his podcast, and the first thing I said to him, I said, listen, I said, I don't know you, all right? I haven't even really watched much of your stuff. I just know you call yourself the handsome homebuyer, so I'm just going to assume you're a total douchebag, and you got to make me feel differently. Like, totally. And he's like, he started hysterical laughing. He's like, I totally get it. He's like, I get why it looks like that.
Yeah.
Once I started talking to him, I love the guy. I think he's a great guy. I think he's very bright. I think he does some really innovative stuff, and good for him. And obviously, I learned quickly he's not.
Yep.
But that's just the perception. That's just the perception.
Yeah. Well,
people
listen.
have.
I mean, you know, I just handed the receptionist a camera and continued about my life.
Yeah,
you know, I'm not, I didn't create some, you know, cheesy fucking brand for myself. And like, you know, I love Charles. He's super talented, and, you know, that's an angle too, right? And that's really more the showmanship, you know, route where you're like, you know, creating this WWE personality. Like, I'm not, you know, I'm just walking around and talking to you as if I would be talking to you with no headphones and microphone. By the way, I've never had headphones on to do an interview in my life. So.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah, it's high tech shit.
I feel like you're in it. I feel like you're.
I'm in it. I'd be in it with an iPhone, and you know, that's the beauty of it, because like, people think just because our content is so highly produced at this point, thanks to Brittany's amazing skills.
She does a great job.
You know, people start to think that, you know, they can't do it, which is absolutely not the case, because an iPhone, and we record a lot of content on an iPhone, and the quality, first off, you have to realize most people are watching this stuff on their phones, right? They're not watching it on a huge 80-inch screen where like the quality is going to differ from the DSLR to the iPhone. I think that's important to really point out, because a studio like this is amazing, and I think the purpose behind this is to have a comfortable place to invite people and get the content, right? More so than always being so focused on perfect. I'll you know, now that we're like kind of just going off into like, you know, really what it takes to create content, I think anybody can do it, and the less perfect it is, the better it is, right? Because
I can see that.
You know what I'm saying? Like, if I were to go outside after this whole classy interview that we're doing here, Brittany's still rolling, I trip and fall on my face in the parking lot, that's going to be the most magical part of what I did today. No offense.
No. I get it. And what you're doing is completely different than what we're doing here, right? And I think that in some ways, I think that in some ways it comes more organic if you feel comfortable doing it.
Yeah.
And in other ways, the production of it's a lot harder. You guys are getting a lot of content and a lot of different stuff. And then it's someone's job. I don't know if it's Brittany's or what, but someone's job to chop that all up and kind of create something of it. So the storytelling behind it is kind of like a cool aspect. But I think that the imperfection of it, I think in general, like, I don't know, I take that approach with everything, even when it comes to sales. Like, you got these guys who are all buttoned up and like try to say the perfect thing at the perfect time in the perfect way, and like people see right through that shit. How many times do you get that phone call and it's like, "Hello, sir, I'm with so," like, hang up, click. You know, like sometimes it's got to be like, "Listen, man, I want to buy your property. Call me if you want me to do it. Whatever. Like, here you go. I'm ready to roll when you are. Just call me." And that's you know, people respond to that so much better than like that fake kind of bullshit. And I think that's kind of the same way in this, right? Like,
absolutely,
the more real it is, the less buttoned up it is, the better the response is because people know it's real.
Yeah, I think there's also, there's a time and a place, right?
Yeah.
Like we have obviously highly produced content, and then, I have me just randomly babbling shit on my Insta story, right? And ultimately, like, I look at the whole thing as a funnel, right? So ultimately, if you fall down the rabbit hole of watching the vlogs, you're gonna start to actually see who I am as a person. And the real magic behind that is, almost every time that I go into a meeting, somebody thinks that they know me. Mm-hmm. So that's a major, a major differentiator versus,
that becomes a lot more comfortable in a sales
absolutely,
process, right?
yeah. So
they almost feel like they have
salesy,
the
right?
Yeah.
It's but again, I mean, that's not to say that young people today who are out just creating content and have never done a deal, mm-hmm. like that's a whole other extreme that I think is becoming challenging. I think for young people to understand, like I was really good at what I do for 15 years. Mm-hmm. And then I turned a camera on myself and continued to be really good at what I do and grow my business, my substantial, legitimate business, yep. Not like touring the country to go to masterminds. You know what I mean? So, and it's interesting because the minute that you turn a camera on yourself, create a lot of content, have a videographer, you're automatically in a club of a lot of, really interesting people, some that are operating on a super high level that you learn a ton from, and others that are convinced that they can become a bazillionaire by turning a camera on themselves and, don't even have a career, so to speak. And what I've seen from the network that I've created over the years, a lot of people are reaching out to me now that are in that space mm-hmm. of creating content but don't have a real business. Yeah. And they're reaching out, to see how, they could possibly get involved with what I'm doing, or if I can help mentor them or guide them down the right path, because again, it's not as simple as just, using social media and like buying followers. But I think for young people, that's a big challenge.
And I think that, I'm a big believer and I use the phrase a lot that good marketing will make a bad business fail faster. Mm-hmm. More people see it, more people will know it. And I think that kind of goes with this as well, right? You start creating content, and us as a society and us as consumers of this content have grown much smarter, right? There's so much out there. There's so many people out there that you kind of know who's full of shit, who's not. Sooner or later, that act kind of runs out, you know what I mean? And I think that that people realize that more. There's still that level of you're going to fake it and you're going to and you'll convince people, right? Mm-hmm. But I think that from a real practical standpoint, it's not sustainable.
Right.
People will run out. Sooner or later, people are going to realize that, if we started doing this every single day and I had Devin in here interviewing people, this and that, and all of a sudden there's no buildings being built anywhere, and, you don't see Colca anywhere except for online or in a studio, things are going to be weird, right? Like we're no longer a construction company. We're no longer doing real estate deals. We're no longer doing that. People will quickly realize there's no substance behind it. So I think that goes the same way here. If you're not doing it and you get in front of a camera every day, and then sooner or later that's going to run out, and it's probably going to run out faster with the more content you create and the more you try to convince people.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, listen, much respect for actually setting out to do this when, again, you have a legitimate business and you don't necessarily need to be doing it. But understand, that what this will do for the company in the future. So, there's not a lot of people who truly understand that and then ultimately execute, right? Yeah. What has the reception been locally from people that you've invited here? I'm curious because, again, I think I'm a unicorn on Long Island.
So people that walk in the door, like, and they see the studio, their reaction is, holy shit, like, you guys are really doing this. It wasn't
You're not faking it.
Yeah, like, it wasn't like you guys just decided to throw a couple TV screens up. Like, there's stage lighting. There's the whole thing. There's lighting on the walls. There's lighting that's not even lit up right now because it's a different set and different studio. So I think people are genuinely impressed. I think people think like we're insane, like they just don't understand why we're investing so much money into developing a media platform. And we understand the vision, we understand the long-term goal, we understand what it's going to turn into after it turns into what we're trying to turn it into first. You know, like there's an evolution here that, and we have a very strategic plan on where that's going to go. So I think that people react to it in a way that they're genuinely impressed, and then right after they almost are like concerned and confused, like what the hell are you guys doing?
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of been the reaction of everybody so far.
Who's been your best interview so far? Who wowed you?
You know, I think that the guys, I've had a few guys that are doing this, guys that create content, right? I think that different people wow me in different ways. I had Charles in here, for instance, right?
Sure.
And he's just a life. He's just such a character, and he's just so full of energy, and I could kick it back and forth because he understands the content game, and he does it in a way, you know, different than other people in this, and that to me is fascinating. I had a young residential broker in here who was very interesting to me just because he's doing content in his own way and sells houses, and you're fascinating to me, right? Like you're fascinating in your own way because you're doing it so much longer than everybody else on the commercial level. These other guys are on the residential level, and you know, this is an old boys club, right? This is like, you know, doing this is so outside the box for the developers and these typical commercial real estate brokers that have been in this business for 20 years.
For sure.
You were like, you know, you weren't even a unicorn. You were the redheaded stepchild, right?
I mean, you know, but I think it's like, there's such a, first off, there's a high barrier to entry into the business, right? Yeah. And then, you know, when you know exactly what the industry is like, it's like, I mean, even if somebody has balls, I don't think many have even if they know what kind of benefit it will have, I don't think that they'd go through the scrutiny to actually get to the other side. You know what I mean? Like they just don't even want it. It's like not worth their energy. Right?
I get that. Yeah. And you know, I could tell you right now that even what we're doing here is we're protected by the studio, right? So
Good point.
Like you're exposing yourself in a way that we're not, you know, like, and I think we're all in, right? And and we talked about it when you first, like, we're all in on this. We're all in on this, and I think it's all in a different way because we are protected by the studio. We're not following ourselves around with a camera and this, and that's exposing you even more than what we're doing here. We're doing something that's outside the box, but you really did it. So I'll give you the credit for that because
appreciate it.
Because that is a little bit even further than what we did. But we're, you know, on our side, what we're doing is we're kind of, and it's a lot like the digital army thing, which I'm going to talk to you a lot more about.
Yeah, sure.
Because I think that's fascinating too. But that's the direction that we're heading, is like we're kind of trying to create a place where everybody who's creating this content, like, I want your content, I want your vlog, and I want it on our site.
Right.
I want our stuff, I want your stuff. I want all their stuff that everyone's going to find value in. And the thing that we're going out on a limb on that people are probably most confused about is, I'm going to promote you, and I'm boosting some of your stuff. I want you to get traffic. I want people to see your stuff, and I also want people to drive traffic to my site. So it's kind of like a crowdsourced kind of approach.
Sure. People who don't get that just don't get life.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, so
I mean, the only way to get ahead is to provide value to people.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? With very little or no expectations in return.
And that's exactly what it is. I don't care if you're providing the value or I'm providing the value. And I'm providing value to you, but I'm also providing value to the people that are watching it. I'm just kind of
I'm providing value to you, right?
Of course.
So
of course,
you know,
it's
people, that's what the most fascinating thing to me is about people who create content. They're all like-minded and realize there's enough to go around and are willing, if not happy, you know, to really help. Yeah. You know, like everybody wants to help each other, and that's rare, you know, especially in brokerage. I mean, where I am, right? Yeah. So speaking about Digital Army, like, you know, we're on a call with a whole bunch of brokers across the country, and we're all helping each other and sharing tips. And, you know, I got to a place where I just don't see anybody as competition, you know, but then again, I'm too focused on my own grass to you know, care whether or not somebody else's grass is greener than mine. Right. So it's a mentality, you know. I think Not everybody moves that way, which is what makes the world go round.
Yeah.
But the people who do, it's nice to be in the company of them because, it's a good vibe, man.
And it's funny that you say that people that are creating content are typical. I find that the people that are in here, the people that get it, the people that are doing it elsewhere, those are the guys that really understand the power of collaborating and the power of kind of leveraging each other's network for the better good of everyone. And it's good, man. It's a good feeling. It's a good feeling to kind of hear that other people are on the same page and, always thought it and now getting out there and kind of being part of it is really cool. Question for you.
Yes, sir.
Brokerage side.
Yes.
What does the next 20 years look like? Because I could tell you that from a consumer standpoint, someone who calls brokers and someone who has to deal with them on properties, nothing drives me more insane than calling a broker on a property that I want to buy and not getting a call back or not getting the information you want. Or even worse, I actually think this is worse. They answer the phone and they say, I don't know anything about that property. I'll have somebody get back to you, and not hearing from those people for 2 days. I feel like it's an extremely underserved market. What does the next 20 years look like? Who's going to knock it out of the park, and what are they going to do differently?
Let's unpack what you said. You said a lot. And, there's a lot of issues and challenges with the brokerage business. The traditional brokerage model, I think, is broken in a lot of ways.
Yep.
And there's so many reasons why, and not to digress and get into that. That's like a subject we could have a whole hour show on. But, I think that, and I've thought for a long time that the entire business is going to change and drastically, especially now. I mean, I've said that for a long time, pre-COVID, right? So, I've been really, when you ask me why I created the vlog and why I started doing what I do, I mean, just go to the name of my vlog. It's called Future Proof, right? So, I looked at, this is a sure way to not only, I'm not just future-proofing my business, I'm future-proofing Siano, right? Because, for me, I am constantly growing as a person, and that affects everything that I do, right? If I was being honest, I might say that Sabre is bigger than I ever anticipated it to be, and I've scratched that itch, right? So who knows where I'll be in 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years, right? So, I see so much opportunity, dude, and I'm like I said, I'm a student of the game. To answer your question more directly, the mediocre brokers are a pandemic, and they will be removed entirely from this industry, because if you're not providing, what I do is an art and a science, and we at Sabre do it so well. We marry the art and the science so well with data and tech and every piece of information that we could possibly use to help inform a client and ultimately make a decision as a team. We don't call ourselves brokers. I'm not a broker. That's a curse word to me. I hate the word because to me it's used car salesman. So we're advisors, right? The same way that a financial advisor is, right? I've made so many people so much money. I've grown so many companies from one unit to thousands over the last 19 years that, I'm not chucking space. I do not put a square peg in a round hole to earn a fee. That's what a broker does, and that's going to go away. Once you start to use technology more and innovate, the role is going to change drastically, and you're only going to be needed in the event you're adding extreme value. And you're not going to be able to hide. Either you do or you don't, right? It's the people who, when the going got tough during COVID, sat on their couch and ate Cocoa Puffs, you're out of business, right? I was in my office every day creating new shows, right? Creating At Home with Our Homies, thinking about how things are going to be different as a result of everything that's happening. Not in fear of what's going to change, embracing what's changing and saying, holy shit, man, like everything that I did for the last 4 years, all of a sudden people get it, right? Like when the lights went out and nobody was allowed to work from their office at the same capacity that they were, they all turned invisible.
Yep. Yep. You know, and it's funny you said something else that seems to be a trend in here when I talk about people who are successful, talk about people who are successful in sales. And I actually did another podcast earlier today, and somebody who was in here was talking about not shoving the round peg in the square hole, the exact same thing you just said. And we talked about the importance of providing value and how much more sustainable it is than just getting a fee to broker a deal or just shoving people in a product that they don't need. That will work for a little while. Maybe you'll get a few good years out of it, and good for you that you got a few good years out of it. But in order to grow a business or in order to grow a brand that people know and respect and trust, it's all about providing that value. And it's just funny that concept continues to trend, and the people that get it, and the people that get it are still here 20 years later to continue to talk about it, and that's not by accident.
It's not, but I think the challenge is, in an industry where the life cycle of a deal is 12, 18, 24 months, you can't get into this business unless your family is extremely wealthy without being desperate, right? I didn't come into this business with a golden parachute or a safety net, right? So it's easy to understand how when you're starting out in the business that you're very driven to make a deal because you're starving and you have rent to pay.
Yep.
I get that. The problem is that that's not going to be allowable for young people, moving forward, right? Like, it's not going to be as forgiving. And a lot of people today, it's the microwave generation, right? So like, you want everything instantly. I mean, the years that you have to put into this craft before you get really, really, really good at it, I think this industry as a whole is in trouble. I give back as much as I possibly can. I mentor like so many people. I'm available to anybody because I know how challenging it's going to be, and I don't want us to lose another generation, which is going to happen as a result of what's going on in the world right now. So it's almost inevitable, but I don't feel like it's just, it's not real estate, forget residential, different business, but commercial real estate brokerage and retail, which is obviously where I spend the bulk of my time. It's something that, I think my age group is at such a major advantage, because if you're 20 years in, you learned it the traditional way, you're young enough to figure out all the new technology and the new stuff. And, this downturn and the pandemic that we're in right now is going to, hit the master reset button. It did already, right? But it's going to flush out the older people who are not willing to innovate and couldn't care less. And, maybe they're just like, hey, you know what? This was already tough enough. I'm out. And then the young people who were having a good go at it for a year and a half and like all of a sudden hit a brick wall, right? So, overall, it's a sad story. But at the same time, I've been waiting a long time to get where I am, so the reality is there's two ways to build the tallest building. One is to actually build the tallest building, which I never set out to do. I just wanted to build an awesome building that was tall. The other way is to tear down everybody else's buildings, which, ultimately will make your building the biggest. For me, it's kind of like, I set off to create something unique in the industry and started to build a pretty cool tall building, and then COVID came and started ripping other people's buildings down. And I'm not happy that that's happening, but that creates again a lot of opportunity. But if I didn't pivot again in 2016 to ultimately set out on the path that I'm on now, man, I think I'd be out of business as a result of COVID.
Yeah, I could totally see that, man. I think that we're in the same boat. If we weren't fortunate enough to have, Devin and I are both fairly young. You know what I mean? I'm older than he is, but we're both fairly young. And if we didn't have a foundation of what was built and what was built by his father, really, at least to have jobs and things, and Devin's worked his ass off the last 4 or 5 years to have projects that are rolling. I mean, I see some of these other companies, and it's crazy, And to go back to guys getting in this business and the amount of work it takes to get into this business. Now, I am a real estate broker, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't consider myself a broker or advisor. That I do transactions for us. Like
Sure.
that's why I'm here. That's what I do. It's we'll dabble if someone wants to construct something. We'll help them with a transaction, but
Sure.
we're not doing what you do. But
And I don't blame you, by the way.
it's a tough business, man.
It's a really interesting business.
It's a tough business. It's a tough business. But on the development side which is really why I came in. I didn't have a golden parachute. I didn't have, it wasn't like I came in and said, hey, give me a salary so I could be your partner. And, I had to work for this, right? So it literally took 4 years of me busting my ass, and Devin, to his credit, because he was right there with me, even working all day at Colga, at night, on the weekends, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. We worked our asses off just to try to find that first deal, to make it so that we just made enough money for me to come on board and actually be able to survive. And if you don't have the time to put into this business, whether you're a broker, an investor, a developer, or what, if you want to get into the commercial real estate world, you better be ready to grind, because I've never entered any type of industry, and I've worked in a lot of them, energy, other construction stuff, tech, whatever. I've never entered a business that has been such a high barrier to entry.
Sure.
The life cycle of the sales cycle of a deal to go through.
It's lunacy, man.
And
it's
that's if you get your first deal, which you don't.
Absolutely.
You never do.
Yeah,
So you got to go through
crazy.
3 or 4 before you actually get one. And man, the grind is absolutely insane.
It is. And, again, it's like at a certain point, you have to work towards creating something bigger that you're not so transactional,
Yeah.
and I've been blessed to be able to do that. And I have to commend, the same way you're referring to your partner, I have to commend Kenny Breslin, who, did not need to set out on this journey with me and always gave me enough rope to hang myself.
Yeah.
He thinks I'm absolutely out of my mind. I am.
Yeah.
So he's right. And, we have nothing but an immense amount of respect and love for each other, because, again, when I'm thinking about doing things that a lot of people are like, by the way, I mean, he's totally like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, what, this is, you're crazy. But I know, but it's going to work. Watch. So, like, much respect to Kenny, and it's funny because actually, as the younger generations now, his sons come up, like it's the recognition from them, like, oh my, Jay's doing some crazy shit. Like, did you see who he was with?
Yeah.
Did you, it's funny because, like, at a certain point, anybody who's intelligent, and understands how to operate in business, at a certain point, you could love it, hate it, but you gotta somewhat respect it, because it's all about the grind and, again, seeking discomfort, man.
Yep.
That, and it's not just about business; it's life in general, right? So, you got to be able to roll with the punches, especially today, man.
Yeah, and think outside the box. Don't be afraid of it.
Sure.
I think a lot of people are always afraid to do it different, and especially, again, I'll take it back to commercial real estate being like the old boys club, and people have been doing it the same for so long, and to kind of not be part of that clique or not be part of that club or not do it the same way everyone expects you to do it is definitely scary. I think we're trying to set out to do something very similar and on a similar trajectory, where we want to do it in a new, fun, hip, trendy, different way, but we want to accomplish things on a much higher level. And I think that it could be done. I think you kind of have to have the balls, the grit, and the grind to set out. Understand it's going to be a long haul. Understand that it's not going to be easy, and understand that there's going to be a lot of criticism. But if you do it and you get through it, the sky's the limit. And
For sure.
I think that you've done it very well. I
appreciate that. I think we're in similar positions where, the old school people that, I impressed along the way, doing everything the traditional way that it's done for the first half of my career, let's say, the first 10 years of my career before I started Sabre. I earned their respect, just from working my ass off and creating something out of nothing, right? So, again, about being at the age that I'm at, it's crazy to me when I read in The Real Deal that, somebody I know is starting up their own brokerage, and, and we connect and they're like, you know, dude, you inspired me to create my own brokerage. You inspired me to get in better shape. You inspired me to blah, 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 right? You inspired me to create content. You inspired, you know, that's that type of impact, you know. For me, it used to be about how many deals can I close in an hour? You know, how many, like that type of stuff, which I think is great in your 30s, you know, like 20s, 30s, right? And then at a certain point, I think for me, it was really like 40. When I hit 40, like the meaning of everything changed. But it's also because, again, like Sabre, again, like when I set out to start Sabre, I didn't necessarily have the biggest expectations of what it would become, you know? So I honestly feel like I've already surpassed what I expected Sabre to be. So, so how can I lose? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's playing with the house's money on a certain point. But so for me, it's really, if I can't do what I do every day in a way that excites me and pulls me instead of pushes, if I have to push to do something, I'm not interested. If something pulls me, I'm not working. It's life, right?
Yeah. No, totally.
That's what it's about, man.
So, hey, listen, I think we've been talking for a while. We could probably talk forever.
We could.
It is an absolute pleasure, man. Completely respect what you do, what you've done, Sabre, the brand, everything you've built. I think it's tremendous. It's awesome. Thank you for coming in here. I'm sure at some point I'll have you back because there's still a million more things we could talk about.
For sure. I don't even know if we talked about how I started Sabre. No, I'm kidding.
I think
I went around that question a couple times.
We hit it. We did. But listen, thank you very much for coming in. I really appreciate it. And I'd love to have you back.
Thanks, brother. Thanks for having me. Keep up the great work.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, man.